Hey guys, Nisarg here from DataMites. Today's interview question is about what is inheritance in object-oriented programming, or what is inheritance in OOPS. So we know that whatever we create, an object of something, it belongs to some of the classes. And when I say that an object belongs to a certain class, it means that it has the property of or it has the attribute of that particular class, and also that object is ready to execute functionalities that has been defined inside that particular class. This is a general concept about OOPS. But when we talk about inheritance, it's one of the concepts in OOPS in which what happens that we basically create two classes, and one class becomes the child class of one class. Okay, one class becomes the child class of another class basically, and that child class inherits all the properties or all the attributes and all the functionality of its parent class. So let's take an example and understand. Okay, so let's create I'll just create a very famous class, which is cars class, because uh, we can understand this in a better way, I can say. So if I say that, how do we create a class? Simply we write this keyword call as class, and simply I'll write the name of the class called as car. C is the capital over here. And now there are certain things that are required, that we need to have the init function ready. And inside this init function, I'm going to write certain properties about the cars. Let's say what is its brand, what is its doors, and what kind of fuel it takes, and let's say kind of mileage it gives. Okay, so these are the basic information about a car, like brand, doors, fuel, and mileage. And inside of it, because we have given these kind of attribute to this particular class, we need to store these things inside the self function, like self dot brand equals to brand, and then we have to say self dot doors equals to doors. Then we have to say self dot fuel equals to fuel, and then self dot mileage equals to mileage. Okay, so this init function is basically a function which allows us, when we are creating certain object of this particular class, then we require to get a certain property or a certain attribute to that particular object. So this brand, doors, fuel, and mileage are the properties of that object that is going to get defined by the user. And whenever these things are going to come, it's going to get stored in this self.brand, self.doors, self.fuel, and self.mileage, like that. And I'll simply create one function of my car class. I can simply say that, let's say brand. Okay, so it basically, whenever I'm going to execute this functionality, which is there inside the class car, say brand, is going to name the brand of the car. Okay, so I say print, simply write the name of the brand is, and I'll use dot format, and simply I'll say self dot brand. So what is going to happen when we are going to create the object of this car class? Of course, we are going to put the attribute, one of the attribute, as brand. Now that brand is going to get stored in this self.brand. And then whenever we are calling the say brand functionality of that particular object, this print statement is going to get executed, and this thing is going to get printed. And of course, self.brand is going to get placed over here. Okay, so let's say I'm just creating some random car, let's say my car, and you know that how it works. And inside of it, we need to put some attributes like brand. Let's say I put like Maruti, and then I said, let's say door is 5 doors, sorry, not 5, 4 doors. And let's say the fuel is petrol. So I'll write petrol. And let's say the mileage it gives is 25. Okay. And now you take this object, my car, and if you want, you can simply display one of its attributes. Let's say you want to know how many doors it has, simply say dot doors, and it will give you the attribute, because this is the attribute we ourselves has put inside this thing. Okay. And if you want to call any of the function which is present inside this class, let's say brand, all you require is to say my car dot say underscore brand. Now you will say the name of the brand is Maruti, right? Because we have already entered the attribute of this brand over here as Maruti, and this same thing is going to get called off when we are calling this function. Now, let's say this is a parent class. This is a parent class, parent car class. And let's say I want to create a new class which is going to inherit all the attributes and all the function of its parent class. Let's say I'm going to create a class of a car called as Hyundai Verna. So Verna is a one of the most popular cars in India from Hyundai. And let's say I am just creating this class called as Verna. So, Verna is also a car. So instead of writing all these things, like whatever the functionality and attributes which this car class is already having, we can do one thing. We can simply make this car class as the parent class of this Verna class. So if I simply write over here car, it means that inherit all the properties, all the attribute and functionality from the car class itself. Then come down. Again, the same thing. You need to have the init one. You need to initialize your init function. Again, self. And of course, it should be having brands, doors, and kind of stuffs, which is already present inside my cars. And apart from that, let's say I want to have some more properties of this Verna cars specifically. Let's say engine, or I can say that start stop button. We know that new technology, start stop. And let's say sunroof. So I have put 2 more attributes to my Verna class apart from brand, doors, fuel, mileage. One is start stop, one is sunroof. Now, you know that for each and every attribute that we have taken in the init class, we need to save it back into a local variable, into a variable called as self dot a name of a variable. But because we have already have these things over here and we have inherited this car class, in order to make these things reflect or to take it back from the parent class itself, all we require is to say super dot underscore init underscore, and then you can say that this brand, doors, fuel, and mileage, this already belongs to my parent car class. And rest of the things you can simply use the self dot variable name start underscore stop, and then self dot sun roof. Okay. And sunroof, like this. Now let me just write one of the functionality as well. I'll simply say def about me. Okay, so there's a function inside this Verna class. It says about me, because in Verna class also, in Verna car, there are certain models. So let's say I'll use again a print statement only. I'll say, hey, I am one of the model of Verna having start stop button equal to, and then I'll say and sunroof equal to. Now this is one of the model of Verna car, and it is inheriting all the properties, like of course brand is there by default, doors, fuel, mileage. But new thing that has come is start stop, whether that car, whether that model is having a start stop button or not, or whether that model is having a sunroof or not. And I'll say dot format self dot start stop, because this is going to be placed over here. And then self dot sunroof. Okay. Let me run this. Now, if I take one of the variable called as SX, because I know that in the Verna car, there's one of the model called as SX, and in the SX, you don't have the sunroof. So I'll simply say SX equals to, and it is a object of this Verna class. So I'll write Verna. And because inside Verna, we have to give certain attributes like brand, doors, fuel, mileage, start, stop. Let's say brand is by default Hyundai. And doors is of course 4. Fuel is, let's say, diesel. And mileage, let's say 25. And let's say start stop button is yes, it has, so I'll call it to be true. And sunroof is false, so I'll call it to be false. Okay, now let me run this. Now this model is ready, SX is ready. Now whenever I try to call a function which is present inside the class Verna, I can simply say SX dot one of the functions, let's say about me. So I'll say about me, and this is going to tell me, okay, I forgot to use this self over here, my bad. Now, the moment I'm running a function which is present inside this Verna class specifically, this function is getting called, and whatever being written inside that function is getting executed. Because we have put a print function, it is printing up the things that has been written inside of it. So you can see, hey, I am one of the model of Verna having start stop button equals to true and sunroof equals to false, because in the attribute of sunroof, we have put a false. Now, if I want to call a function which is there, which is present there, not inside the Verna class, but inside the main parent class, that's say brand. So if I say sx dot say underscore brand, and if I simply run this, it will say the name of the brand is Hyundai. Why it's saying so? Because it has inherited every attribute and every functions which is present inside the parent class of this particular class. Okay, so this is what inheritance of a class is doing. Okay, thank you so much.